Our engineer, he worked on the founding team of Napster.
Oh, really? Wow. And you've grown it to 1.3 million, which is the dream of so many AI startups. What would you say are the things you've done to accomplish it?
Moving really fast, listening to the community and growing so that people would share with their friends.
Recently got selected as one of the startups of OpenAI's collaboration in South Korea. And you said you met Sam Altman.
Because Sam Altman's standing at the back, just watching the venue, and it looked just like Hogwarts, and we thought, hey, let's do a Harry Potter party.
Has there been an event where everything is seamless?
No, it's always a problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, David Woodworth. And then the first question I'd love to ask is, what do you do at the moment, if you could summarize? So many things you're running.
Yeah, so really great to be here, Elaine. Thank you. So where do I start with? I got the 3 businesses that I'm running now. They're all super related, so it's not like 3 separate businesses. The one I spend most of my time on is HiLoKal, which is a audio language exchange app. Like you said, we hit 1.3 million users recently. And then the other business is Global Soulmates. It's like a place for basically just big parties. We rented a cruise, we rented a ballroom, we rented a factory, and then we do lots of different themed parties. But we found a venue and it looked just like Hogwarts, and we thought, hey, let's do a Harry Potter party. So that's the events company, and then the tables is a cafe, so that is like a language exchange cafe. Yeah. So that was actually my first business. Yeah, I mean, it all started just as like a side hustle, really, about 9 years ago. Maybe 8 years ago.
That was 9 years ago. I checked on LinkedIn.
Okay.
9.
Nice. I was working at a job, and then on the side, I wanted to learn more Korean. So I, with a Korean business partner, we're still partners today. We started a language exchange. So we just posted on Meetup. There's a place called Somoim, which is like a event creating app in Korea. All these different platforms, we just said, hey, we're going to meet, we're going to practice and exchange language. I think the first meeting we had like 15 people, just mostly our friends, and we would just talk and hang out. And then we did it every Saturday, and it was just like a really good meeting. And everybody felt really good afterwards. People brought their own friends, and it got bigger and bigger. So then it got to about 20, 30, 40, 50 people. And it was just too much to manage. It was too much work because I had another job at the time. So me and my business partner, his name's Marcus, we started charging a little bit of entry fee to join. It's like $1 per person, and they had to buy their coffee. So now we're getting 50 people, so we're making $50 a week between 2 people. We're working really hard at this. So we thought, okay, what should we buy? Well, the cafe is getting too small, so we'll buy plastic chairs. So with our $50, we bought plastic chairs, and then the ones that you can stack, so you can pull them out and like put it here. So people would come in and be a new person, like, hey, how's it going? What language are you learning? Okay, join this table. So they would go to this table, but the chairs are all full, so we'd like pull out one of our plastic chairs and stack it. So then they got to like 60 people, so $60, right? And then people were liking it too much, and there's too much people, so we increased it to $2. So now it's $100. So we did that for a bit, and we thought, hey, let's go to a bigger cafe. So we got a much bigger cafe, and it got to like 80 people, 90 people, 100 people, 150 people. And, some of the things that we did well is like just keep listening to people and what problems they're having. We try to fix it. So people will sit at a table for 3 hours, and they'd be like, this is kind of, I don't want to talk. I like you, but I don't want to keep talking to you for 3 hours. So we made a system where we would rotate everybody in the cafe. Like we would give people different cards. Like this is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then we would make an announcement. Like 100 people in the cafe. It's a 2-story cafe. Like, hey, everybody, you're going to stand up and you're going to rotate to your table. This is table A, B, C, D. So we did that. And people liked that because we solved that one problem. It's like sitting at the table with the same person for too long, didn't like it. And ideally, I mean, when you're doing a language exchange, it's a social event, there is a dating element to it, right? Like you want, like the worst table is where you have 6 guys at one table, all from the same country, whether that be Korea or America. They kind of sit down, there's like nothing to really talk about. If you just add maybe 3 women, 3 guys, and a good mix of different countries, the table is like way more interesting. Lots of just the right amount of tension, and people can connect way better. So when we do the rotation, we try to match that. I'll fast forward a little bit in the story. Later, we developed a matching algorithm. So anytime someone entered our cafe, they would input their target language, their native language, their level, their country, and then we had software that we would project onto the screen on the wall of the cafe, and so everyone could just go to that table. So it was like way better way of matching people. But back into the old days, so that cafe got bigger and bigger. So now we're making, I think we're charging $10 entry. So it was getting up to about $1,000 per week at that point. But we had to pay the cafe rental on all that stuff. And then we thought, hey, this is actually pretty good. So we opened another one Wednesday, and then we opened Thursday, and then it was actually every day. So then I quit my job and kept growing it up. By the end of it, we had 2 cafes that we owned, and I was going to open the 3rd cafe, and we were having about 5,000 visitors per month.
Okay, can I guess what happens next? COVID?
That's right. You got it. So this is where COVID came in. And it was terrible because like a foreigner in COVID around, a few months, maybe 6 months after it started, was like, very suspicious because they could have been coming from a different country. It's hard to really remember what it was like at that time, but like flying, meeting people, not staying in your house was like very bad. But people really needed to meet, right? And we would follow the laws, but they were very strict on us. They would send people from the immigration office just to watch us, especially. Like, don't, like, make sure that people coming, like maybe Italy was a hotspot. Like if there's any Italians in our place, they didn't like it, or if different places became hotspots. So it became very bad, and it was a certain point we just couldn't open it. And then the rent was very bad. Like the expense of the rent was like over $10,000 per month, Chunman per month, because it was in Gangnam, and we could not get any income, and we just had to keep paying that, right? And we weren't getting any relief when it first started, because actually a few years prior to that there was MERS. It came and it affected us for like a week or two, and then it was gone. So that's the thing, is when COVID started, we didn't know how long it would be.
And no one expected it.
No one expected it, right? And the government was saying, yeah, by April it's gonna be done, of 2020. It just kept going and going and going, and so it was a very tough time. And we decided, okay, we'll just try to be lean as possible in our business operations, and we'll just wait it out. But at that time, I got to rewind a little bit. So that's the first business. That's tables. So the cafe language exchange is tables. So during the really the sweet time was between 2017, 18, 19. It was really a great time for me. I was a bit younger, and I really enjoyed those meetups. So what we found we started building a community, right? We had an email list, people were coming in, that on special events, we want to have more special parties, like a Halloween or New Year's or Christmas. So Halloween was the first time that we really kind of clicked, like, oh, here's a 200-person party. And the entrance is higher cost. We can take that money and give prizes back. I remember one prize we found, like a airplane ticket to Tokyo was only about $200. So that was a first place prize. And it was such a good marketing thing, right? Like, here's a Halloween party, first costume prize, ticket to Tokyo, or $200, because the price was about the same. I think the second prize was like a drone, like a drone you could fly. Actually, I would probably want that more. I don't know. So we did that. Everyone dressed up really great, right? Because they wanted this. Just being a part of the community is something special. At that time, Halloween was not that big, as far as I knew. Maybe in Itaewon it was quite big, 2016, 17. So we hosted these big parties, and we thought, and it worked out really well. We made good money. Everybody was happy. So we decided, let's do the next one. The next one, we did New Year's, and it was even bigger. And then we just kind of had our ambition stoked at that time. We started looking at different venues around Korea, and there was one, it was like a yacht club. We approached them and like, how much would it be to rent? And they said $3,000. We're like, oh my God, that's way bigger than our previous rent. Okay, let's do it. So we rented the whole place. And then now it was just up to us. Like, how many tickets could we sell? And this time tickets were like $30. It includes, everything you need to have a good party. They just pay once and they can join. So we did that. I think we had like 600 people join that party.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was such a good time. Like, and we arranged with the yacht party because we were so insecure about how much value we're providing. So we're just always trying to give more, like unlimited of this kind of beverage, this DJ, this performance, and at the yacht party, including your ticket price, you can ride a yacht up and down the Han River and come back to the party, right? It was like a really good deal, and people responded to it. They liked it. and we offered like group discounts, so like more people would come and buy a ticket cheaper, and they would come. So we had a success with that, and then we thought we just had our eyes looking out for the next one. Like it kind of at that time it was like, oh, what would be next? Like let's try to imagine something even bigger. So we noticed that there was a cruise going up and down the Gimpo River. So we rented the cruise, and there's fireworks at the end of that. And then, it just kept getting bigger. And there's like the floating islands. Sebet Dung Dung Sam is like the floating islands. There's 3. We rented the whole one for New Year's. And I think
So you rented an island out in the middle.
well, it's called the floating islands, but it's actually a building. It's like a building that floats on the river, and it's 5 stories, including the rooftop.
Oh.
So we had about 2,000 or 3,000 people join that event. It was very, very big event.
How did you manage? Because
Yeah, we had about 100 staff, temporary staff. Yeah, for that event, and it was great. Like, you doing the countdown together, everyone in the ballroom, and it's like 5, 4. We've screwed up the countdown a few times. It's really like just technical things all along the way. We made a lot of mistakes. Like the screen's there and the countdown's here, and the MC can't see the screen, and the DJ sets it. Everyone's got to have the countdown timed up. And everyone's looking at they're like 5, 4, and the MC's like 10, 9. It's all mixed up. Like, oh man, like those kinds of things happen a lot because like we learn along the way. But it was a lot of fun. So the community kept growing because we had like the language exchange kind of as like the home base where people could come and meet and really make good connections. There was a dating aspect to it, but really people were just kind of self-development type people. And then we hosted the larger parties, and that would kind of like bring the wider community of Seoul in, and we'd have like a really good party. So then COVID hit, right? And we had the big parties are out, right? We were like, the whole climate, the environment was just really bad. Like there's another really big festival called Water Bomb. And I remember in like April where it was COVID, 2020 was still quite bad. And Water Bomb's like, yeah, we're going to do the party. And I just read the comments, and everyone's like, are you serious? Are you looking at the news? You can't do it. So we're like, oh my gosh, like we can't do anything. Like the whole environment was just not for events. So we had to do no Global Soulmates events. The cafe was struggling, but people still wanted to meet. So they sent us messages, and they would say like, can we meet online? So we started a Zoom meetup instead, and we charged just $2 because we're bleeding money so much. So $2 for each person to enter, but we hosted really good events. We did the table rotation. We just try to simulate the environment of the cafe in the Zoom, and it worked well. I think we made about $6,000 on Zoom events over a few months, just because we were hosting so many Zoom events. And then we started thinking like, you know what? We don't need to even have a cafe because we can connect people from all over the world online. And that's where HiLoKal started. So we had an engineer who is a very good engineer who came through through our cafe. And we met with him, and I was always interested in development, right? And I started to learn how to code at that time. I was developing a website. So I'd always talk to him about coding and engineering. And he loved what we were doing. He loved learning Korean. He loved Korea. So it was just such a good fit. We started working on our website together first, and then we thought, hey, let's just start a new company. So the 3 of us, me, Marcus, the business partner, and then Jonathan, the new CTO, we joined forces and we started HiLoKal. Because the engineering on it is like pretty intense. Like we get about 10 to 20,000 hours of people talking every day. So the amount of conversations, if you tied them all together, it's about 10 to 20,000 hours of just people talking to each other in HiLoKal. And the engineering, like the kind of like the plumbing, the digital plumbing, so to speak, needs to be pretty strong. So we needed a really good technical person. So that was Jonathan. And we've been doing that for the last 3 years. The hardest thing ever. Really tough to do it. Like a lot of challenges getting that working. We still don't have it right. But we're in a better position now than we've ever been.
I mean, I'd love to, because you're on the technical front, you say it's difficult. You recently got selected as one of the startups of OpenAI's collaboration in South Korea.
Yeah.
And then you said you met Sam Altman. I'd love to go on to that.
Sure, yeah.
And like things you've learned maybe about technical things from that experience.
Yeah, so GPT, we always sort of had an idea that GPT would be really good. Because I remember, like, I've got a pretty close eye on Twitter or X, because that's where all like the news comes out. the fastest. And even 2 years ago, GPT-3 was in beta. And it came out, we could see it starting to code things by itself, and it was kind of amazing. But no one was talking about GPT. Because of Jonathan is actually from Silicon Valley, he was able to get early access to GPT-3. But at that point, it was just not good enough. So we'd always said in our pitches, like, we're going to include GPT in HiLoKal so we can give corrections to what people are speaking. The technology was not really there yet. Because when we would listen to what someone's saying in the app, the transcriptions would come out inaccurate, and we give that to GPT, and it wasn't smart enough to give anything useful. So we just kind of sat on that for a little bit, and we waited. But now GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 came out, and it's like all becoming possible now.
And GPT 4.0 recently.
GPT 4.0, right? It's really getting very good. So. Yeah, we'd always had that in our company DNA. It's kind of like when you're speaking on this platform, you'll be able to get corrections. That's what we've always wanted to do. But technically, it just hasn't been there. But now it's there, and we're really pushing on that. So one of our pitches to the government program was that, and we got selected among 12 other companies. And then, me, Jonathan, and Marcus, we flew to Silicon Valley. It was great. It was a great trip. And they showed us lots of stuff. They took us to Stanford. And we got some cool lectures, and we went to Microsoft, and Microsoft is trying to really kind of flex and say, like, we're going to be the AI platform. Like, AWS, they've got like a really good thing. We know that, but we're going to be the leaders in AI. So it kind of felt like a sales pitch from Microsoft. They're like, startups, everyone come into ours. And then we went to OpenAI. OpenAI is a pretty small office. It's not that big. It's like, I think they said they were moving at that point, but it looked like a really like well-decorated barn. it was like a really like if you go into like a trendy place and it's like a cafe, and it's got like hangers. It looked like that, and we didn't know if we were going to meet Sam Altman, because like by the point of this recording, Sam Altman's like a superstar tech guy, right? And he was then too. I went in January. We didn't know if we were going to meet him. So we're in the auditorium, kind of like I don't know how to describe it. Anyways, it's a place where we can give a pitch to the judges at OpenAI. And everyone had done the pitch, and then the last guy was doing his pitch. And you could just feel the room get really tense because, it's like everyone's whispering because Sam Altman's standing at the back. He's just sitting there watching. And you could kind of tell, like, maybe I'm reading into it, but I don't think, he didn't look like he really wanted the attention, because like, the guy was giving a pitch and he didn't want to disrupt what was happening. But I feel sorry for the guy. Like, there was a lot of tension on him. But I remember, like, I try not to pay attention too much to like too much status games kind of stuff. But it was notable that despite what you think about Sam Altman, he is now well known and sort of like projected to like the front, like among like the Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, like Larry Page kind of level. Like, he's kind of like a household name as this tech CEO. So to experience like him walking in, whether you like him or not, he did have an effect on the room. So everyone's like tense and like looking at him. And then so that was interesting just to see. Then he just came up, and I think he was just busy. He's just like, "Oh, you guys have questions?" And then we just asked him questions. That was it.
What did you ask him?
I asked him because HiLoKal, we are looking at how we can use second language learner data, if they want to give that data, how we can train language models to better understand and better help language learners. So I'm interested in the data field. So I asked him, training these models, GPT-4, GPT-5, GPT-6, will require lots of more data. Where is the data going to come from? And what's going to happen to the data market? And he said, no matter how you look at it, if you're the next couple of years or maybe longer, there's going to be a wall that we hit where there's no more human produced data. It's going to happen. So the result will be that models will need to be more efficient at getting value out of lesser data. That was his answer. I don't know if that makes data more or less valuable.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, so crazy.
Yeah, but so that was like, I tried not to be affected by here's a really popular, famous guy, but he did have that effect on the room. It's a real thing. It's kind of like the halo effect. You definitely notice that. But San Francisco was really interesting. It was a good trip, and then we came back just a couple months ago. Yeah.
I guess going back more broadly, you've been in entrepreneurship for like 9 years. Your HiLoKal has been for 3 years. What would you say like big lessons you've learned in almost a decade of entrepreneurship, and specifically maybe in the context of community related businesses, which are really related with?
That's a great question. So the community. The weird thing is I'm sort of an introverted guy.
Yeah, I know. We were just talking about it.
My friends who I went to high school with, they came to Korea and they visited me and they got to attend one of the parties. And they're like, who would have known that Dave, they call me Dave, would have been the party guy? Because like, I'm really actually not. But I think I just have, for a community, what's been helpful for me is to always try to provide more value. To have like almost an insecurity about how much value you're giving, like, that won't be enough. We'll give more. And I think what it does, it kind of like that value that you put into the community is kind of stored there. Like, because unless everybody in that community goes home immediately, then it's stored there, I guess, but now they're gone. But if there's a community that's around you and you just keep putting value into it, then it grows. And then when we announce a new party, I can send out to the email list and immediately we can get like 20-30% sold out. And then by the time the party happens, we can be pretty much certain that the party is going to sell out. So that has been a good lesson for me. It's just the value that you put into your community will not just be gone, even if you don't capture it the first time. Like people will recognize that. So I think that's been one good thing. Another good lesson, I guess less community related, was like for me, starting a business, it was a bit scary when I first started, but it was never that difficult for me because one decision I made earlier in life, which was I wanted to become a minimalist. I'm not really, I got married. I don't think any woman would like to be with a minimalist, but like the decisions I made in my early 20s, I really felt constricted by having things. So I sold a lot of things. That was just the life I was living in my earlier 20s. And then what I realized is if I didn't have a job and I didn't have money, the lifestyle was kind of the same. So I could just go and try anything. So that was helpful for me to start a business. Because like if I had gotten a job and I got a salary with, I don't know, early 20s, like a decent salary, it'd be very hard to give that up if I was enjoying that salary to the fullest. But I'd already kind of decided I didn't want to have a lot of things. So that's just one thing that was helpful for me to start a business. But by the time COVID happened and the global soulmates, the events business and the language exchange cafe, it all kind of collapsed. We immediately pivoted into HiLoKal and didn't have a lot of time to complain or feel sorry for ourselves about the condition, like a once in 100-year situation. It's not our fault. Nobody's fault. Well, who knows? And so we pivoted into this other thing, and then we just go at that with all of our resourcefulness, all of our effort. And it felt like no matter what happens, you can adapt. I got a strong feeling of that. Even though we haven't had success, it's still en route to being a success, I think. And we're in the best position we've been in. It feels like even if like your business gets collapsed, you can still, it's not over. Like you can pivot into something else. So kind of that's what I think is a good lesson. Like if your thing doesn't work, just go try again. Just go try again. And I think I want to have that mindset. If this one doesn't work, then I'll pivot into something else. Right. I felt that quite strongly at the end of the pandemic when I thought, oh, we pivoted out of this. Like our business collapsed, but I'm still okay. Right. Yeah. That was your question. Like what along that entrepreneurial 9 years, what have I learned that is helpful? I think that would be it. Those two things.
It's interesting. The guest I interviewed yesterday mentioned the same thing as resilience, and not complaining too much about circumstances. Right. I mean, there's much to complain. It's 1 in 100 years or maybe. Yeah. And just, when you're running communities, like I've faced this as well. I've hosted only 3 events, which is a lot less than what you've done. And how do you make sure, like, a bad event doesn't happen? What are procedures you set in place to make sure that an event goes well?
Yeah, that's great. It's a great question. It's just something about an event where like you put your name on it. You really don't want it to go badly. So I think it's like in other things, companies make internal deadlines. Like we're going to get it done by this so that this can happen. And then the deadline can be moved. But an event, there's no moving the deadline, right? Like everyone bought their tickets, they're coming. So there's a lot of pressure to get it right. So the question is like, what are the procedures? That was actually something that would really help us, setting up procedures. There was a long time where we just kind of like, we just did it every time a little bit differently. But, writing out procedures, like how you do it, how you sell tickets, how you distribute the tickets, who is responsible for the bar, who's responsible for the ticketing. So over time, I've kind of documented all the procedures. That's been very helpful. Having a trusted partner, very important. In Korea, I would not be able to do this without the partner. Or I would be doing a different business. It's very language intensive business where you have to talk with, location, like a venue. You have to talk with, supplies, like who's going to supply the food or the alcohol or whatever. Like there's a lot of language involved. And my business partner is very good at handling that. Whereas I'm handling a lot of the other things like the marketing and the concept, the performers and all that stuff. So having a partner that's different than you has been very helpful for me.
So I saw that your role is you're co-founder of HiLoKal, and you've also your CMO role, and you've grown it to 1.3 million, which is the dream of so many AI startups at the moment. What would you say are the things you've done to accomplish it? And
Yeah, that's a good question. So my role is CMO, but the role that I actually spend most of my time is on product owner. So I spend a lot of time working on the product. Whenever we have a marketing budget, I always want to put it back into the product. So I've done some things right, and I've definitely done some things wrong. So the things I've done right is early in the company, I read a book. It's called Hacking Growth. It was a very good book early in the company. So like moving really fast and releasing minimal viable products, like MVPs or minimal viable features. So I think we did that well. And really just taking the community growing skills and listening to the community and growing that so that people would share with their friends. So that's the main way I tried to get users, is to have people share with their friends. So making features where people could share directly to Instagram, or incentivizing ways for people to invite their friends. That was the main marketing way. So every time we have a marketing budget, let's just give it to the product. Because it's a live audio room, so just imagine like you and me at a table. This could be one audio room in HiLoKal. You're the host. You're a great host asking great questions. That's what makes better content, right? In our app, it's no different. So what we needed to do is we needed to incentivize hosts. So we made a host recruitment program. So we like met them on Zoom. We explained what we're trying to do, and we just paid them money per hour. And it worked okay, but a flat fee per hour wasn't that great because how many students came or didn't come didn't really matter to them. So then we attached an incentive based on how many students were in the room listening and engaging with you. The more students you had, the more you would make. So some teachers, these hosts that we were incentivizing would make like $20, $30, $40 an hour at some point. And that was like really good for something that was just already kind of fun for them. So we scaled that up a lot, and it turned out that giving money to hosts, so like subsidizing these classrooms, was better than paying Facebook or Instagram marketing. So like if I paid these ads, like a user would click and they would download, and Facebook and Instagram marketing is very good at doing that, but they would enter the app and the content was bad, so they just bounce out. But if we incentivize hosts to make good content, people would tell their friends and they'd be like, wow, this is really good content. So they're bringing their friends. So just paying the host instead of Facebook or Instagram grew the app much faster. It grew the app so much faster that we ended up paying about $30,000 per month on supporting these hosts. And we thought, oh my God, we can't do this. We need to find a business model. Because at that time during the pandemic, all apps like us were doing were trying to grow. So we were just trying to grow. We thought, oh, we can't grow like this because like next month, what's it gonna be, 60,000? We can't afford to keep doing this. So we, as we had always planned, we tried to give like a in-app currency to students, so students could pay the teacher directly, and it worked to a certain extent. A lot of students that our app tried to help, maybe people from, some of the students just don't have money to give to teachers. So we did that, and it did sort of shrink the amount of hosts that we had because we were holding it up with subsidies. So that was one, but long story short, we try to always improve the product so people want to invite their friends. So what I did well was just constantly try things quickly and quickly. But what I did wrong was I just constantly try to do things quickly and quickly. It's like the double edge. So what has happened now is a lot of the things we tried were done less than polished. And now there's too many things. And now the design has a bit of an issue. So that's something that needs to be fixed, I think. So going really fast was really good in the early days, but I think at some point in the company, when you get to about 1 million users, you need to switch to a bit slower and a little bit better done the first time. And we're making a big shift to adjust to that. This is another example of like going, learning, failing, adapting, right? In the business. Yeah. So what do I do as a marketer? I just try to work on the product so people invite their friends. Long story short.
It's like a better form of marketing than...
I think it's the best form because we've tried paid marketing and especially a community, like you can throw a ton of users at it and you'll see your daily active users is a good thing to trace. Like how many people are actually coming in and using the app every day. And it'll blip up and then it'll kind of come back down to where it already was. So it's like, it doesn't stick. Like you could just throw community businesses like, Dangan Market or even Facebook in the early days, like the growth is going to be like this and then it will start going like that. You cannot, a social business, you cannot just have like just jam it full of people and then you expect it to work. It's got to be something that grows organically at some level. Yeah.
And like, where do you look for because you have philosophies and how you go about this. Where do you get those resources? Who do you listen to? Because you've achieved something, 1 million, that's a lot of people. What do you think are resources that you listen to or insights and people you've listened that have contributed to your success?
I think, okay, so I saw this was like some quote or something like, if you don't know what to do, you need to read. Like if you just don't know what to do. But if you're totally like mentally constipated, then you need to write, right? So I think those two things have just been very useful. Like if you write it out, because you probably have already read, like I listen to a lot of podcasts, I read books, and then applying it is very difficult because you don't know what to do to parse it out. So writing out, just journaling is very useful, I think, to get to a place where you can apply it. But the things that have been very useful, Hacking Growth has been good. That was very good in the early days. What are some other books?
Or entrepreneurs that you just listen to?
I think listening to entrepreneurs is good because they give you inspiration and it kind of creates a fantasy and it's like, oh, this is, other people have shared my struggle. But I think there are books that are like more practical that help you get over certain problems. Another one was called the Cold Start Problem. That was a book by a guy who worked at Uber. So like, how do you get when you create the app, how do you get the app from 0 users to like enough users that people can talk to each other? That's a very big problem. So the Cold Start Problem was very helpful for that. Hacking Growth was very good for understanding how to move quickly. Hooked is another book, which is about how to create habits. So those 3 books have been useful. When I get a book that I like, I try not to move on to the next one, because that's my inclination, is just like to devour lots of books and then I kind of have like a shallow execution. But if I get one book and it's actually really hits the spot of what I'm working on, then I'll maybe work with that book for like 6 months, because like in there is so much applicable stuff to me and you need to apply it.
I mean, though two of those books have been recommended like drastically by a lot of the entrepreneurs I meet. So just another thing is, you said you had 100 staff members, you have 3 startups, you have a lot of members working, and evermore you have 1.3 million people who you kind of in some ways manage.
Yeah.
How do you what are strategies of just managing large groups of people from 100 to 1.3 million?
Okay, for the events, the 100 people is like temporary, just for that one event. So explaining everything as best as you can, good communication is very important. But then when the event happens, it's kind of like a war. It really is, like everything, like we're out of ice. It's just a problem. So it's just like,
Are there always problems when you have? Has there been an event where everything is seamless?
no, it's always a problem. It's always a problem. Yeah, it's always crazy. Yeah, so communicating everything communication is it's very
And what do you think are key components of communication?
I think it's always a good idea to know what outcome you want of the message you're trying to say. Like, if you have something you want to say, sometimes your own words can make you confused. Like, you just start with words. You're almost like a GPT. You just like start, like one token comes after the next. And you just say things. That's not really effective communication. Like, when you're sending a message to maybe a Kakao chat room or like a WhatsApp chat room, and there's people who are going to joining the event, before you compose the message, just think like, what is the real thing I want to convey to everybody, right? And then it's just useful to ask that one question. It seems kind of like obvious, but I continue to make the mistake today where I just start talking and then I'm like a GPT thing that just like spits out a bunch of words. It's important to just compose like, what is the actual message that I want to convey. Yeah, that's very important. And then if you're doing a meeting, just the basic things like, this should be read before a meeting. In the meeting, what are we going to decide? And then write those down and share them. These kinds of things are important. So that's for managing the staff. For managing the users, still a problem. It's tough. A lot, because it's a different kind of communication. You can't talk to 1 million people. So it's more like using analytics and different tools like that is different. Yeah.
And then your team, because you're in your office right now. How do you manage your team, would you say, of those 3 different companies you have?
For the events, they only come up every once in a while. So that's kind of just like intense for a short period of time. The cafe is something that honestly, I used to do a lot of that. But now in our company, we have one person, one of our partners focusing on that. And I'm focusing more in the app. And in the app, I don't know. I think I work mostly with engineers, and engineers. I like working with engineers because there's not a lot of day-to-day communication that needs to happen. It's like engineers are the culture of engineers is really great because like software engineers, if you go online, like people will share what they've learned because like they just like building things. They like solving problems. So if you set up very specific problems on a regular schedule and you just give time to complete it, then I don't think there's a lot of day-to-day managing that needs to be done.
I mean, just a lot of startup founders I interviewed, they have an issue with hiring great engineers, and sometimes them lying, or sometimes they're just taking advantage of their unawareness. How do you go about hiring great talent?
I think we got lucky because our CTO is really good. So he attracts the first engineer we hired, he Googled our engineer and he's like, I want to work for you guys. Because our engineer, he worked on the founding team of Napster. You're too young for Napster.
Oh, really? Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so he was there, and then he had an exit in the Silicon Valley, and so he already kind of sort of validated himself in that scene. And now he works on what he kind of wants to work on. He really likes working with Marcus and me, and we like working, we're a good team. And so when we were able to get engineers, they would search him and they would think that they would want to learn from him. And the thing is that you want to get the best engineer you can as a beginning, sure, and then that will help create a better culture.
As a co-founder.
Yeah.
How do you think, because he sold one of his companies, Silicon Valley, worked for Napster early team. What do you think attracted you guys to work together?
I think it was just a transparency thing in the beginning. because he was working on another app. It's called Caption Pop. You can watch YouTube videos and you get the captions come out. And he would come into our cafe every day. But at daytime in Korea, he would just work on it all day. And as an engineer, what can happen is like you're too much in the engine room working on, you know, the nuts and bolts, and you can kind of get lost because like you're working on like the perfect, most elegant code solution for this one feature, but you kind of have to take a step back and realize, is this feature even useful for anybody? You know? But as an engineer, it's hard to get two of those perspectives because you're in there. You can lose the forest for the trees, so to speak. So he would come to the cafe and he would talk to people, and I would love talking to him because at that time I was very interested in tech products, and I would give lots of feedback to him, and he enjoyed the cafe. And I think that created a good foundation because it was not like it was just like an interest in, and it was just like a transparent thing. Like, oh, I'm interested in your project. You're interested in this cafe. Let's just talk. And from that, like, there was a good spirit in that interaction rather than like, what can you do for me and what can I do for you? It was just like, it started out in that way. And then we started working together and it worked well. And
You've worked in like Korea startup ecosystem a lot. If you can kind of show the videos, like all these Korean business startup awards. What do you think is like? I mean, you've been to San Francisco, but what do you think is like difference in startup ecosystem in Korea from the rest of the world that you personally have experienced?
Where I'm working, I'm not doing a lot of the grant applications. There's another person in our company who's really working that. He's doing a really great job. But I think he's able to do that because, you know, the engineers and the designer and the product and what I'm working on is getting traction. So he can take that and go to a pitch, and then they can recognize that and they can give us support. So whether that be an investor or a government grant, Korean government is really trying to support startups. There are a lot of programs that are coming out all the time, whether it be office or money support or anything. So I think starting a business in Korea is a good place to start a business. Personally, that's what I think.
And it's even if you're like half Korean, you said you weren't that fluent in Korean, but you think a Korean partner is essential still in succeeding in Korea?
For me, like as a person, even in English, I don't like to do administrative things. I'm not very good at it, and it bores me, and I get frustrated with it. And so, if I was going to do it in Korean and I had to go through it, it would be really tough. I would probably try to find a different. I might do like digital nomad kind of stuff and just like open a business in Estonia and like and try to do it that way. I might try to do it like that, but yeah, the business that we have now is definitely a combination of the founders' skills, and all of that administrative and grant earning power is coming from that side of the.
So you found like your unique things you enjoy and you're good at, and then you delegated all the other things to other co-founders who are good in that skill set, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's just, I guess in one word, it's just a good partnership.
Yeah. And what makes you do all this, like related to being an entrepreneur? What drives you to do all this?
I've thought about this question, and I think the main thing that I want to do is I want to create something that takes off. That's the number one thing. Like, it's sort of like a self-validation thing. I think that's the core of it. Like, I'm not too much looking for other things that startup founders may be looking for, whether it be like making money would be great, but I don't think that's the primary reason. I want to make something that hits the audience perfectly and it takes off. Like a creation. That's what I would like to do. That's my main driver. I've experienced a little bit with certain events that sell out and it's like really good. I get that feeling, but for whatever reason, I want to create an app that does that. And if it happens, I don't know what I'll do next.
This is the last question I asked all my guests. If you can travel back in time to when you're 17 years old, what would you tell yourself?
Okay. We had sort of talked about this question before, right? That one's tough because the question is kind of like, what piece of wisdom would you want to send from the future to the past? And I think the thing that I would like to do, if this is allowed in the question, is like, I would like to just tell myself who I have become, and then he can decide what he will want to do. Because like, Yeah, there's so many like specific things that would be helpful to tell him. Like I would definitely tell him that like maybe if he met me and he might be he could be indifferent, he could be happy, he could be disappointed. Those are all different things that he could be feeling, right? But that would probably be a bigger motivator for him to do something, right? Just like this is like who I am might speak louder than what I'm trying to say, right? Like that, and it's possible. Like when I'm looking at it, there might be things like, I should have done this more, I should have done this more, or I shouldn't have done that, or maybe I should have. Maybe he sees me and thinks, oh man, you should have socially. Maybe you should have been like more relaxed in your 20s, or maybe like, don't you think that your 17-year-old self would look and then be able to judge like almost instantly? They kind of say like by the time you're 40, I'm not 40 yet, or by the time you're 50, you got the face that you deserve. Like that the expression that who you are will show up in your face. So if he just sees you once, he might kind of know instantly, like, oh, I better relax, or like, oh, I better work harder, or I'm not sure. He might have to decide. But if I was gonna pick one practical thing, moving to Korea was a good choice for me. I think the trajectory I was on living in Canada, I think I could have been a totally different person if I had stayed there. But moving to Korea was kind of like a reset. It cut a lot of boxes that I was in, right? Like I am the son to my father, the son to my mother, the brother to my brother, the friend to this group of friends, the graduate of this school. I was this person in high school. But then coming to Korea was like a reset, and I got to like take all of the knowledge that I got over that so many years and all of the skills that I got, and I got to reapply it and like in my new way. And that was like really exciting time for me, because like I always wanted to start a business. Let's start it, right? Whereas back in school, back at home, it could have been like, well, what are my friends going to think? What are my parents going to think? Like it was very liberating to do that. So I don't think it has to be Korea, but just like moving away from home can be a very good thing. It was a good thing for me. So I'll probably tell him maybe he could go somewhere else. Maybe he can go to Korea. I don't know. That specifically was a good choice for me. But as for nuggets of wisdom, I don't know. I'll just say like, hey, this is who I am. And maybe he might choose a totally different life. Right?
That's deep. That's deep.
Well, like, how about, I'm curious about for you, if you see yourself in maybe 20 years, like, it would be crazy, right? Like you would want, like, who would you expect to see? Do you have an image?
20 years, I have a 10-year image of myself, 20 years, but I just don't know. I feel like I changed so much. And I mean, if I do see like a character of myself 20 years, first of all, I'll be fucking crazy. Second, I think it would make me reconsider a lot of my life decisions probably.
Right. Because, okay, so here I am, I'm 34. And imagine I go back to my 17-year-old self and I say like, because I'm like still in my grind. I want to make this thing a success. And that advice would be like, okay, you got to work harder. But then I see myself in 20 years, so I'd be 54. And I see him, and he's the one who worked harder, and I see him and I don't like him. Like who can say going backwards what is the right thing to do? Like I think like those really big decisions, like who you're going to become, I think it mostly just comes from like the immediate, like how you feel about it, right? Like let's just say I see myself in 20 years and I see my face and I'm like, oh, he kind of looks angry, right? Then I would immediately feel like, oh, I don't want to become that. Really.
Oh, you don't look angry, by the way.
Yeah, right. Or if I see myself and I look happy, I'm like, oh, what did you do? Like, how did you get, if you looked happy, right? Or if you was somebody that you respected. So I think that those things like come from like a feeling.
Yeah, I think I was learning this once. Like, ultimately, whatever we choose is kind of like an emotional want to do it. It's the want to be logical. It's the want to be whatever. And it's like, okay, let me just make sure like I know the consequences of it, because I don't feel like I know the full consequences of every decision. And meeting people like you, it's like, oh, this is what happened. This is how it happened. And yeah, I mean, when you mentioned traveling the world, I'm currently thinking of going to San Francisco, like go there or somewhere out of Korea, because I'm opposite of you. I'm going to the west while you're coming to the east.
Yeah, right. No, I that was one thing I would say is do the traveling, because I was 17 when I was you said 17. When I was 18, I went to Europe. I saved up. I worked all summer and I went to Europe. That was really great. It was fun. I would have told myself not to drink alcohol so much at that time, because those are like irreversible things. Like I have brain damage maybe, but the yeah, because in Canada like legal drinking age is 19, but in Europe it's 18. So I got to go to Europe, have alcohol, and come back, and I couldn't drink anymore. It was just like, but I was that's maybe those kinds of things would be like just don't drink so much when you're able to drink.
Like basic life decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, it's easier said than done. And or okay, so where can people find you at? And are there any type of people you're looking for, hiring, or specific people that you would like investors or something? What you're looking for at the moment?
I'm looking for designers, UX and UI designers. I want people. Our company has been so engineer focused, and we have given less value than it deserves is to design and user experience. So anybody who's interested just to talk, or maybe is interested in a position, we're looking for that. To find me, I'm actually really not active. They can find me on Twitter, I guess would be, I think it's David BW.
David, I'm so thankful for your time, and yeah, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited that you finished the episode, and this is kind of my insights and the lessons I've taken away, summarized for the audience at home. So one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that we can see from David that most of his companies are revolved around his passion and interest for language exchange and language learning. And that has enabled him to be at the cornerstone of the AI development and its connection with language exchange. And I think this kind of shows the power of, the obsession you have, the interest you have, and building things around that. And even if the first thing where it was a cafe or a event might not have succeeded at the large scale of HiLoKal, it still gave him the stepping stone as it allowed him to understand how communities work. It allowed him to understand and meet eventually his actual co-founder. In fact, I think that kind of is one of the key components of his success and his story. And another thing which is interesting is he called himself an introvert. And I think this is a very powerful way where we usually tend to define ourselves within certain parameters. Like I used to call myself an introvert, and I still think I am an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert. But evermore, an introvert does not mean you do not like it. It just means that's how you recharge. And I think this can be best shown through an example of Demosthenes. He was a very famous Greek orator, but fascinatingly, he had a speech disability, but he was considered one of the best speakers in the history of the world. And yeah, I think this kind of showed an introvert naturally does not mean you cannot build things in communities, which I found that myself also have enjoyed greatly. And I think this is one of the reasons why you should avoid labeling yourself or limiting yourself within a term. I think one of the other key insights I've learned is that you've got to keep building, you've got to keep trying, and that there is no perfect event. I've tried hosting 3 events myself. The last third one, there was not enough people, and we were planning 20, 30 people to come in, but with a sad number of 5. I think that kind of shows that, hey, you're going to fail while you're building a community. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, right? He was mentioning how there's always been a mistake. There's never been a time when there was a perfect event, which I actually thought that most of the events that a professional would do would be perfect. But no, while you're hosting an event, there will be issues. Maybe small if you're prepared good enough, but you're still going to have issues. And a good person is not by a perfect event, but by the level of preparedness and the clear communication you have, which he says is one of the key cornerstones of building a good community and managing other people at a large scale like events. I think that kind of shows. And he's put out a lot of events. He's constantly done events. He's constantly done something. He's constantly putting himself out there, constantly doing things, which I think is another key insight, as I personally as well think I should push myself out there more. And one of the key insights I've learned from just this channel is that you should be pushing yourself out there. And my greatest mentors, they tell me to keep doing. You've got to keep doing, because if you don't do anything, what are you going to receive? You've got to keep pushing yourself out there. And the fact he's continued to put out events and communities, despite some of the setbacks he's faced, despite the COVID-19 coming up, he changed in the online events. There were some issues with the pricing and such, but he fixed that. He kept hosting events. And I think that's another key takeaway, which is to keep constantly doing things. I think one of the other interesting things is he asked the question of Sam Altman when he went to OpenAI. And the question he asked is around, data. When data becomes more limited, then what should they do, right? And Sam Altman kind of helps point a picture at the world, and this is me to the unlimited understanding I have of AI. And what he told me is, Models should become more efficient, and data should be more highly they should have more high quality. And this is something which puts his company at a very interesting point, because it's hard to get the quality of the data, which is the conversations of the communities that he has, which is very hard to get, and then how he can channel that and how he can build better models. Those are some interesting ideas. And also the fact that Sam Altman was quite hesitant, he wasn't really wanting to be the speaker. I think that kind of shows, if you want to be a successful founder, it can't always just be about you. He didn't want the Sam Altman effect to, I don't know if that's a term, but for that to be affected on other people. He wanted for the light to shine on the people who he brought literally thousands of miles apart. And also, while I was at his place, I think I mentioned this, there were so many awards, there's so many things saying like $100,000 or some award from this Korean startup accelerator or some foreign accelerator, and having a high user and branding it in a way where it's not just the fact, oh, I'm going to show the startup and the world's just going to accept me. No, it's like kind of understanding what the Korean investors and the competition wants, and really kind of strategizing your pitch for that kind of helps greatly for him to win so many awards. And his office was quite nice. He had a standing desk and and then there was a server running, and there were like a lot of seats. And it was a Seoul Startup Hub, which is one of the startup places to go to if you're in the office. So just all around great guy. Learned so much more. And after the conversation, I meet him once every month for a certain event I go to. So that's really great. And he's been a friend. Why am I telling you guys this? But and I just learned so much from him, and I hope that the audience at home gets the same amount of information from him. He is quite hard to get to, but as the link I've shown below, hopefully you can contact him on Twitter, and I'll tell him to hopefully reply. And I'm so thankful for you guys' time. And ladies and gentlemen, this is HiLoKal from HiLoKal Podcast. Thank you very much.